In late June, 70 researchers and farmers took part in a WA Livestock Research Council by invitation study tour to the UWA Research Farm in West Pingelly. On site, they were treated to a broad range of presentations that provided an insight into the extent of projects underway and the degree of collaboration between WA's livestock research community. In this presentation, Murdoch University's Bronwyn Clarke talks about the Merino Lifetime Productivity project, the learnings from it 6 years in, and how they're applied on farm.
I'm a researcher at Murdoch University, and my area of expertise is in sheep genetics, particularly merino genetics. And I'm going to tell you a bit about the Merino Lifetime, the MLP project. So I need to just let you know that when I put my red hat on, I'm representing Murdoch University. So I'll step into my Murdoch role and let you know about this project. Now, the MLP project it's funded by AWI. It's really important that I tell you about this project today because the next three speakers after me are doing what we call add-on projects to the MLP project. So I'm just going to give you a bit of a background to the animals that we've got here and let you know where we're up to. In saying that it's funded by AWI, I also want to recognise that AWI have just stepped on board as a Tier 1 member at WALRC, and we're really proud that they've chosen to do that as well. So the MLP project here on Pingelly, the sheep here at Pingelly, are linked to 4 other sites across Australia. There's 5 sites across Australia, and what we're looking at is the lifetime productivity of ewes that are the progeny of 134 different sires. Okay, so across the 5 sites, we've got 134 different sires, and we're looking at their ewe progeny and their lifetime performance. So the ewes here at Pingelly were born in 2016 and 2017. Beth, who's here, was involved in setting up the project here. So the 2016 ewes are about to have their 5th drop of lambs, and the 17 ewes are about to have their 4th lot of lambs. These ewes are the progeny of 15 different sires each year, and they've been running together for their lifetime. So we keep them together. The only time we split these ewes is after preg scanning, when we follow lifetime ewe management guidelines and we separate them into singles and twins, and just before lambing we put them into smaller mob sizes for lambing. So we run these ewes together. What are we looking at? Well, we're measuring an awful lot of information on these ewes. There's over 1 million records across Australia that have been taken on these ewes. So each year before shearing, we take a mid-side sample. We get that measured for wool quality, length, strength, fibre diameter. We take their fleece weights at shearing. When we're doing their mid-side sampling, they're being visually classed for wool traits, conformation traits. We get DAG scores, we get wrinkle scores, we take worm egg counts when we can. After weaning each year, we do functional classing on the ewes as well, and Jared's going to talk to you a bit about that in a minute. So there's nothing we don't measure on these ewes. So we've got a lot of records on these ewes. But I guess the question is, why are we taking all these measurements? It's all about answering industry questions, and questions like, when's the best time to cull? Okay, when should we cull our ewes? Should it be based on a visual class early on? Should it be based on once dry? When's the best time to cull? The other questions that have been asked are things like, do some genotypes, do the ewe progeny of some genotypes put all their energy into wool production and they don't produce as many lambs? Or are they producing a lot of wool and then when they're having lambs, their wool's dropping off? Do some genotypes produce a lot of wool early and then drop off? They're the sorts of questions that are being asked with this project. Now we're in the last year of the project, so end of December we'll be finished. 2 of the other sites have got another year to go, so it's going to be a little while before we get the data analysed across all the sites. I just want to give you a few little tidbits of information from the MLP site here at Pingelly. The first one is at the very first classing, 70% of the animals classed as culls were twins. Okay, so we don't tell the classer whether they're singles or twins, but 70% of the culls were twins. So maybe there's a message in there that says if you need to cull 20% of your ewes, maybe separate them into singles and twins and cull 20% singles, 20% twins, so you're not getting rid of all your twins in one go. Okay, so maybe there's a message in there. The other bit of information is now with my 16 drop of ewes, they've had 4 lambing opportunities so far. 3 of those ewes have had 9 lambs, okay, over their 4 lambing opportunities. 3 of those ewes have had no lambs ever. They're the only 3 that have been dry every year. In the first year, there were 57 ewes with no lambs. Those 57 ewes with no lambs have gone on to produce 194 lambs. Okay, so when I say we class them into tops, flocks and culls, we don't actually cull anything. In this project, we don't cull anything. We record whether they were visually culled or not, but we don't cull them. So with this huge data set, we get to have a look at that information and work out, John Young hopefully will be doing the economics on it for us, to have a look at the economics of when to cull the ewes. 16 of those 57 that were dry in the first year have gone on to have either 5 or 6 lambs in the next 3 lambing opportunities. Okay, so they may not have had one first, and between them they've produced 84 lambs. So, if we'd got rid of them in the first go, there's a few lambs that we didn't have, but it's at the expense of keeping our older ewes. The economics of that needs to be looked at. One of the other bits of information, just quickly, is that of the rams. So each year the ewes are mated to a team of rams, and we take the DNA of the lambs to work out who mum is and who dad is. Okay, not usually done on a commercial basis like that. And what we've found out every year is 2 or 3 of the rams do half the work. Okay, so there's some rams in there that are only getting 1% of the lambs, 2% of the lambs, whereas every year 2 or 3 of them are getting 50% or more of the lambs. Okay, so there's just little bits of information that they're not the questions that were asked originally of the project, but we're finding out as we go along some useful bits of information. The other one that I always have to tell everyone is about our bipaternal twins. We found out that 50% or more every year of the twins come from 2 dads. Okay, and that's just from doing the DNA of the animals. You wouldn't usually, as I said, do it on a commercial flock. But I guess what are the implications of that? Not a lot, unless you are going to save some money and just DNA one of a set of twins to work out who the parents are. Don't do it, because you'll only be right half the time. Or if in a research sense you were going to do a twin study, don't just preg scan your ewes from a syndicate mate and take the twins to do a twin study. You'd have to DNA those animals to make sure that you are actually getting a good set of twins that have the same mum and dad. So we're getting some little interesting bits of information about the project. As I said, the more useful information is going to be about those culling decisions, the difference between genotypes, their lifetime productivity, and we'll get to that point once we get the whole data set. Our site committee here at Pingelly is putting together the list of questions that they want answers to from just our Pingelly data when we finish the actual physical measurements of the animals in December this year. One last thing that I'll leave you with is that we're having a field day here on the 21st of October, which will be our last chance to come here and have a look at all the ewes in their sire groups. After that, the ewes will be leaving the property. So it's the last chance to come and have a look at the animals involved in this project, which is really going to be significant for the merino industry, including looking at how the data that we've got will contribute to ASBVs and indexes with sheep genetics as well.
Once upon a time when we ran the base flocks at Katanning,
Yep.
did something similar, and a lot of the results were suppressed, as you might recall,
Yep.
because they were deemed to be politically unacceptable. What risk of that happening again?
I think, personally, that like the ewe base, the sire base of MLP being particularly diverse, the entrants, the people who've put the data into this project nationally, is diverse enough that we will get the results published that are there. Like I think we'll get the results out there.
A couple of rams get 50% of and a lot of twins. Is there anything in particular that stands out about the rams physically? I mean, are they just the biggest, or what?
No, I can't actually tell you that. I actually thought it was a mistake when we first got the results, because the rams happen to be, a lot of them are half-brothers that we used, and they're born in the same year. So it's not like they're older and younger or anything like that. So I actually thought that the DNA was wrong, that they just couldn't separate out, until Johan Grief told me that the system was very sophisticated and it can work it out, and this is the way it works. But last year we used some young rams for the first time, and they didn't get a lot of the progeny, but we're using some of those young rams again this year, and it'll be interesting to see if they can knock off some of the older rams and whether there is a young ram effect there. But I can't tell you in terms of the size, sorry. Yeah. But the other thing is, consistently across years, because we're using the same rams, often the same rams each year, the majority of them are the same, we're seeing that the rams that produce a lot of progeny are doing it every year. So I guess the implication for that is you've got to get your rams right, because you could pay a lot for a ram that's giving you 1 or 2% of your progeny. And similarly, you could have a ram that isn't your best, genetically, and they're putting their genes through half of the progeny. So important that you get your rams right.
Bronwyn, similar sort of a question, but the lifetime management course has been outstanding and well done to everyone who had input into that, developing that.
Yep.
But constitution, I would have thought it's almost number one, and we're putting a lot of emphasis on the ram. I'd put a lot more emphasis on the ewe.
Yep.
And repeatability of twinners, just what I've found over my life. I just wanted some input.
Yeah. We've collected all that data. So we do, when they're visually classed, we are classing conformation traits as well. So we can, so are you saying conformation in terms of their lifetime productivity of the ewes, or?
I was saying the constitution, the ones that, stay above, the score 3.
Yep.
Rather than have big fluctuation in their body weights, etc.
Yeah.
I'd say that's more important.
Right. Well, we have collected that data, and it will be good to have a look at that and have a look at how they perform over their lifetime. So it's certainly there. Yeah.
You talked about the subproductive ewes earlier and how you're not culling them.
Yep.
Obviously, they're going to get fat and do other things
Yes.
during the year. Is there any messaging that we can receive as farmers that allow us to account for that when we're making our own selections?
In terms of what?
Well, how do you discount those ewes because they're fatter? Do they get in lamb more easily? Do they not? Is their ovulation rate higher? So litter size increases. How do we account for that in a selection process? And can this MLP project help us with that?
That's a good question. One thing, sorry, just because what you said reminded me of something. When they're classed, those 3 ewes that have been dry every year, let me just tell you, they've been classed top a number of times, funnily enough, because they are bigger and fatter and everything else. We do have data, Tim, that is their weight and their fat and eye muscle. We're measuring that as well. We do have that data as well. So we do need to look at that and think about how we can use it and come out with the right messaging. So yeah, that should be on our list of questions.
I'm interested to know, with those dry ewes to start with, whether there's any difference, or whether there's a difference that they're more likely to produce twins than a lamb than a ewe that was pregnant straight away.
Right.
So
I haven't looked at that.
Slow take up,
but then have twins. Yeah, I haven't looked at that specifically, but yeah, we have that data that we can have a look at for sure. The MLP project, I'm very sorry, it tends to be a lot about watch this space, but I can't say that for very much longer. Okay, it'll be, hold me to it, because this is our last lot of our last lot of measurements that we're taking.